What I remember is they always had modes of transportation. They had
Because they couldn't walk. They had no legs.
1980s now.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of 1980s Now, a weekly examination of the importance of 1980s pop culture and, get this, it's really cool, its continued influence today. My name is Will, and joining me, as always, is my friend and co-host, Kat.
Hello, everyone.
How to say it in a weird way, but not to alarm anybody. John is fine. He's actually at CES right now in Las Vegas, working the My Arcade floor. If you check out his YouTube channel, Gen X Grown Up, you can see all the cool stuff that they have, that My Arcade has out there this year. Stuff you're going to want to get your hands on, I guarantee. At least one thing I'm coveting right now.
Me too.
Joining us instead is one of the two fabulous hosts of Desperately Seeking the 80s. Please welcome Meg. Hey, Meg.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
I'm so excited to be here.
We are thrilled to have you.
Hi, Meg.
Hey.
And hello to everybody. Be kind to Meg, folks.
Oh.
I'll boot your ass right out of here.
So far,
Everyone's being nice, Meg. It's just, Who's the new chick?
Marcus called you a rando already.
Of course, Brandon says hello to Meg. And hello to everybody there listening right now or watching right now live on YouTube or Facebook. We do it every week at 7 p.m. Eastern. Come and hang out. So, Meg, you've got this cool show, that I love for lots of reasons. Audio quality aside, which is fantastic. So you get past that first hurdle. But the content, and you do a cool thing where, and it's ambitious, I think, is you tell a true story, often a true crime story.
Yeah.
And then your co-host Jessica does something a little more lighter fare, although sometimes they're, not necessarily, like the cocaine thing, the story she told this last week's episode.
Yeah, that was a little grisly, actually.
Yeah.
When she gets into history. Yeah, I usually do ripped from the headline. So anything that was on the front of a newspaper in the 80s in New York City. And she does more pop culture, but it can also be about food. It can be about, Madonna. Or it can be about, honestly, whatever she wants to talk about.
Motorcycle shootings. Yeah.
Exactly.
And do you guys, I often wonder, because like this week's episode is a good example, and folks should check out Desperately Seeking the 80s, right on this platform you're listening to right now. It was kind of coincidental, it seemed, that you both told a story related to drugs from very different angles. But do you coordinate at all what you're going to talk about? Or you surprise one another?
Not at all. That's part of it. It's storytelling time.
Right.
So we try to surprise each other. And then at the end of the show, we go, did those stories have anything in common? And it was drugs. It was all drugs can really mess up your life.
And for folks who want to check out your most recent episode, the part you talk about is one of the many stories that, are part of the satanic panic of the 1980s, which we've talked about a few times on our show. John talked about it on his other show recently. We're fascinated with that. It was such a dark times in a sense.
Yeah, it's interesting because, last week I talked about Ricky Queso, who's considered called the Acid King. And he was a teenager who killed his friend. Now, was it influenced because he was listening to Judas Priest and Ozzy Osbourne, or because he liked to play Dungeons and Dragons, or because he said he wanted to be a follower of Satan? Probably none of those things, right. I think. Mm-hmm. I think it was just suburban kids who were at a loss and didn't know what to do with themselves. And unfortunately, you put angel dust in that situation and nothing good happens.
And Jessica made some really neat observation that I had never considered, that, we live in a suburb now. I live in a suburb now, but I grew up in the city, in Jersey City, New Jersey. That's right. So for me, a suburb is like country living. And it took a while to get used to, but Jessica was pointing out that in the 80s is closer to the time of the inception of the suburbs.
Right.
And there wasn't a whole lot for suburban kids to do. Like, they were sort of these deserts of, as far as retail and I don't know. That's the way I imagine it.
And actually the guy who wrote the Rolling Stone article at the time, who instead of listening to what the policeman and the DA had to say about this whole situation, he went and asked the kids. And that's exactly what the kids said. The kids said, there's nothing for us to do except go in the woods and take drugs.
I've never been so bored growing up in Jersey City. But and there were drugs around.
The city is awesome now, by the way. It's like a desert.
I couldn't afford to live there,
Right.
Meg. I mean, literally, the brownstone the earliest place I lived from like 0 to 8, it was turned into some like multi-million-dollar condos.
Oh my gosh.
I believe you.
Gentrified.
Anyway.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, Doug says, well, this took a gruesome turn. Yes, but hang on. We're going to talk about import some lighter fare. And Marcus says, angel dust has never once made me think of offing Johnny. John, our co-host.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yes. Very good. So the cops won't come looking for you. Hey, on today's show. So thanks, Meg. Yeah, definitely check out her show. It's really cool. There's a link in the show notes so you can find it real easy, at least on this on Apple, I guess. I don't know. No, it'll go straight to your website. Then the people can figure it out. How about that? There you go.
Be great.
Hey, on today's show, we'll review current news stories related to 1980s media, including. I didn't write anything about this. I try to come up with clever things sometimes, Meg. This one, I just didn't know. A woman had Star Trek plates, and they're got her into a lot of trouble. Let's say it that way. A Christmas present from 1978 was just unwrapped. It reminds me, I do have a present upstairs from a few years ago that someone gave me that doesn't talk to me anymore. I've never unwrapped it. It's probably plus pandemic years. It's probably 8 years old. Mike Myers, the actor, Mike Myers, was scared. I'm talking on the 80s show. We got to clarify. Not Michael Myers. Mike Myers was scared shitless. The MPA, the Motion Picture Association, has notes for the creators of The Monkey. And the Hulkster was booed unceremoniously on WWE. All right. I think that's it. All right. Let's get caught up on all those stories in 1980s. All right. Hey, this week in 1980s news, as reported by the New York Times, she turned in her Star Trek license plates, but the tickets kept coming. Have either of you guys ever had vanity plates, by the way?
No, but I wanted
I
them.
don't know how to drive.
Oh.
You don't know how to drive?
No, so I don't have a car or plates.
Okay.
But when I was reading about this story, it was confusing as to how, like, are all Trekkies bad drivers? Like, why is she suddenly getting all these tickets?
Yeah.
Like,
I don't know. I have a theory about this, but I don't know.
Okay, yeah. Such a
what's
good
your
question.
theory?
Is this a New York thing where you don't need to drive? I thought it was a LA thing where you don't need. No, LA you need to drive. New York you don't need to drive. That's right. There you go. Well, let me tell you the story here. So New Yorker, I'm going to say Beta. Beta. Look, this sounds like a Star Trek name.
It does.
Beta Corey. I'll say Corey. Returned her license plates stamped with NCC 1701, which is the call sign of the USS Enterprise in the Star Trek franchise. All the ships going back to the original series had that, at least that first numerical designation, and then they had different letters after them. But she turned them into the Motor Vehicles Department in New York in April of 2020. But in August of that year, she got a $50 ticket for speeding in the Bronx, even though she had stopped driving in June as her eyesight weakened. Then ticket after ticket arrived. So here's my theory. So apparently, according to this article, at least, they say Star Trek fans were out there doing their imitation of Warp Drive speed. That's the New York Times language.
Oh.
What? I think they're just talking tongue in cheek here. I think based on the types of tickets she was getting, some of them were a bunch of ne'er-do-wells maybe getting this plate to obfuscate their actual identities.
Right. So faking a plate, and the plate that they decided to fake was just like their favorite show.
Right.
Well, I don't know. I think part of it is this plate, as we'll talk about, is available. This imitation of her plate is available on Amazon for $14. Is there are there any other plates as convincing maybe?
Right.
For
that
$14?
look like a license plate that have those letters and numbers. Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And
a lot of people had the same idea, which is interesting. A lot of people who wanted to drive fast.
I guess what's not clear is if they are fans, are they putting them in the back window and the cameras are picking it up, or are they putting it over the plate?
I thought it was both. Like some people were covering up their plates so that they could do something bad and they wouldn't be tracked. But the other problem is that if you're just a fan and you put it in your windshield, then the cameras will pick up on it. And that's a problem with the cameras, right?
Yes.
So if just automatically sending out these tickets to people, which is not fair to that poor woman who, by the way, that was her ex-husband.
Yep.
They weren't even, it wasn't even her vanity plate.
She wasn't the fan, right? Yeah,
seemed very unfair.
The plates were purchased by, as you point out, originally by her then husband, who was a big Trekkie, in 1998. But when she turned them in, she got a note from the DMV that said the plates were destroyed. But for the next 4 years, Corey, who's now 75, was entangled in state bureaucracy and various state bureaucracies because she kept receiving tickets for various infractions, from speeding tickets to, in some cases, robbery in in Ohio and Canada.
Not a good look for Trekkies.
No, it's not. I think she also got tickets because of the Easy Pass systems where you can just, you just whip right through. And yeah, if you don't have your tag to register the toll, they get your license plate and try to find you.
Yeah, maybe it is them having it in the window. They don't realize. But then you're right. It's the camera should be like, wait, there's 2 plates here.
Yeah.
The one on the bottom should trump the one that's in the window. But maybe we're not there yet technologically. We're not in the Star Trek universe yet. They'd be able to do it. According to the trail of tickets, Corey had been flouting the law in a cross-country crime spree using random vehicles, including motorcycles in some instances, in more than 20 states, including Washington, Ohio, Texas, Florida, and her home state of New York. In New York City alone, the Department of Finance said that in November, she owed $16,588.
This poor woman.
And she stopped driving because she can't see well. So she's stuck at home, just collecting bills. Yeah. It's not fair.
And having to deal with this, what a nuisance. Oh my gosh.
I'd be furious. I can't imagine how furious a New Yorker would be. So she was able to clear up all these erroneous citations by contacting the various departments throughout the country. And she's been assured by the New York DMV that this won't happen anymore. They've done whatever is necessary to prevent it from happening. Although they said that even when you turn plates in, even when they're, quote, destroyed, there's always a record of who owned it last, so they could still, assign these types of infractions to somebody.
Yes, actually, Brandon posed that question or that comment. He says, one would think if the plate was returned to the DMV that the person's name would no longer be associated with it, but that's not the case.
At least in the state of New York, they said they continue to have your name on record as the last owner of record. And as in this instance, and for these types of purposes, I guess if you commit a crime, you rob a bank, I'm going to turn these plates in. They're never going to find me. They had to have some kind of plan B. We're going to find you. You own them last.
But also, it does make you think that maybe the DMV is not really on the cutting edge of technology, or, as you mentioned, we are not, in fact, in Star Trek times.
Shocking that the DMV is behind the times in any way. We'd have shorter lines for sure. Hey, let's see what else is going on here. Hey, this is interesting. And other 80s news per People, the magazine or the website, not just a person that was like, hey, Will, did you hear? Per People, man finds decades-old Christmas gift inside walls of parents' house. Now, Meg, I know that Kat has a brother and a sister. I have a sister. Do you have any siblings?
I have a brother, yeah.
Okay.
An older brother.
Now, if you celebrate Christmas or whatever holiday you celebrate, did parents make sure that you had an even amount of gifts to open? My parents were big on that.
Oh, that's a good point. Absolutely. Yeah. Because, kids count.
Yeah. They do.
I didn't. I think somebody did keep track because, my sister and I were closer in age. By the time my brother came around, we weren't really keeping track. But I think my sister kept track, but I don't remember caring about that. But I'm sure she did. So somebody made sure that it was equal.
Right. My wife she's a stickler for this. And it's challenging because our kids are 8 years apart. So we have one that's older who may get fewer gifts of equal dollar value.
Right.
And finally, they're getting at an age where they don't care. They're like, I get it. Just give me cash is fine too. But when they were both younger, it was, okay. And now you both open the second gift.
Proof of love.
Yeah.
Equal love.
Equal love. I can measure my love for you in present. Well, Tim King told People, again, the entertainment rag, that he was helping his parents with a home renovation project when he found a Christmas present with his name on it from decades ago inside the walls of his parents' bathroom.
So weird.
And now, for me, this raised a lot of questions at first when I got to that point, right?
Right.
And honestly, the first thing that came to mind was, I'm shitty at hiding presents.
Crawl space too.
Yeah. And there's a little more of a practical explanation. Tim says that, quote, we took out a medicine cabinet before we drywalled, and I thought I'd better just look in there to make sure nothing's back there, which is kind of, again, that wouldn't be a thought I'd have, but okay, that's fine. And there it was. He explained that his parents would often hide the gifts in the attic, and he believes that in the attic provided some openings to spaces between walls. And this present must have fallen down and they didn't realize
that. Makes sense. I thought it was cool what the present was.
Yes.
It was, were they Hot Wheels cars?
Matchbox, but yep.
Matchbox cars.
Yeah, it was actually, when he ultimately opened it, and he actually said he waited for his mom to wake up because he found it while she was still sleeping. So he waited so she could finally see him open this present. And yes, in fact, it was a box with 4 Matchbox airplanes in it. Which he estimates probably came out in 1970. He probably got in 1978. What I found online is it looks like maybe they were manufactured in 1976. But he said it when he opened it in front of his mom. She's like, I don't remember buying that.
That's my mom now.
Like from this Christmas, she doesn't remember?
Well, okay. 1 year ago. At the moment, she's fine. But a year ago, oh, where'd you get that? I like that. Mom, you gave that to me.
I mean, do you remember any gifts you received in 1976?
I remember standouts for sure. I also remember when I read what he had, what the present was, I was like, oh, that sounds to me like a dream present,
Right.
Where if he had, this wasn't just like a pair of socks. This wasn't like t-shirts.
Right.
It was these, what, Hot Wheels?
Matchbox.
Sorry.
You're a Hot Wheels person. You're a shill for Hot Wheels. We get it, Meg.
My dream gift. But for this kid, I imagine he was dreaming of having these Matchbox cars.
He might have requested that gift. He
I
just
know.
might have. I think it's so cute that you're all into Hot Wheels for someone who doesn't drive, by the way.
And I keep getting the name wrong because I don't drive.
Oh, there you go.
Or you have them and you're after the show, you're like, hey, then you put a little NCC 1701 on one. Hey, pull over. Well, it turns out that his mom was also pretty picky about making sure her children had the same amount of presents. And Tim said, quote, we've been joking that I've been screwed out of one present for 46 years.
That's wild. So they didn't remember what the present was, but they remembered he was one short. That's crazy.
I mean, he probably remembered, right? To your point, he expected something. He made them feel bad and guilty for that Christmas. And that stings as a parent, especially if it's a little kid. You're like, oh, I feel so terrible. Our dinner wasn't ready in time for our daughter before she went to dance tonight. So we had to give her a sandwich or something. My wife was distraught. I failed.
I would have been fine with handing out Pop-Tarts. So
yeah,
I remember something my sister received. I don't know if it was Christmas or birthday, but I was young. I was around 4, maybe about 4 years old or 5. And I was coveting this. It was a motorcycle for some character. It wasn't like Evel Knievel, but was there some female version?
Fonzie, maybe? He had a motorcycle. No,
well, it was a female character because it was there was an action figure in pink. Or
was it Pinky Tuscadero? Did she have an action figure?
Maybe it was Pinky Tuscadero. But
it has to.
I want to look this up. But you just triggered a memory I have because I don't know if she remembers having it, but I remember only because I was playing with it. And I guess I was a little too rough with it and a little part of it broke. And man, I was in trouble.
Oh,
I got talking to. Yeah.
Oh, I just realized I had a picture of the thing. I didn't share. There it is.
Oh, great. Thunderjet.
Oh, yeah, Thunderjets. And I took a peek to see if I could find anybody selling these just to get the value, just out of curiosity. I couldn't find this particular box. It seems like the individual planes go from various prices, anywhere from $9 to $30. Which seems about right, probably for something that's going on 50 years old or over 50 years old.
Well, yeah, and if they don't make them, if you can't find them anymore, I mean, I was looking up Weebles. Do you guys remember Weebles?
But they don't fall down.
They wobble though, Kat. They wobble.
They do. That's true.
And you cannot find the original ones. The ones from the 70s are so hard to find. And of course, they're incredibly expensive.
Oh, you know what I still have? My Weeble that goes in a submarine, and I still have the submarine.
Ooh.
This was the thing I used in the bath all the time.
Yeah.
Do you remember the sub, Meg?
What I remember is they always had modes of transportation. They had
because they couldn't walk. They had no legs.
They always needed conveyances, right?
You couldn't even roll them. Come on.
So you had to put them in like a helicopter or a submarine or a van or something. That's so funny.
So I have these guys, the little Fisher Price guys that you can choke on.
Those are amazing.
Kat, did you murder somebody with those? What do you mean?
These are the original.
How did you get someone to choke on them? I don't know.
I did
very
not
specific.
cause the murder of anyone or the death of anyone. These are old ones that were real. Somebody realized somewhere along the way that they are a choking hazard. And so they no longer make them this size. Mm-hmm. They make at some point they shifted over to the chunky ones, but these are the murder or death causing ones from my childhood. Yeah.
Marcus says he hated his mom for several months and she doesn't even remember what the hell it was all about.
Wait, did Marcus hate his mom or did the guy?
No, the guy in the story. Marcus loves his mom. He also writes there was a Debbie Lawler version of the Evel Knievel stunt bike. There you go.
Oh, thank you, Marcus. That must have been it.
Yeah.
It felt very like stunt related.
Who was Debbie Lawler? Was she like an Evel Knievel kind of person?
Who's Debbie Lawler, Marcus? Let us know.
I guess so. Yeah, we need some more research.
Chad says he found the treehouse on Sunday, which I had as a kid. The treehouse, Weeble Wobble treehouse? That does seem vaguely familiar, doesning it? Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I think I can picture that.
Yeah. Picture a commercial or in a Toys R Us catalog or the Sears Wish book, one of those.
Something like that.
And with regard to the counting of the presents, Karen says we have a box and throughout the year we put things in the box when we find them.
Wow, that's very organized.
Yes.
Marcus says she was a motorcycle stunt woman. Yes.
Wow. I think it must have been that.
Okay, so yeah.
Thank you.
I'm going to look that up.
Yeah. And Brendan says, I'm always amazed that Kat has toys ready to show off. Meg, you don't know this about Kat. We've never seen off screen what is around her, but we can talk about whatever. And she has a toy for it and she pulls it out of somewhere.
That's amazing.
Like John has a room with all these collectibles and shelves. You can see them and he'll go back and get it. Kat is just, oh, look. Did someone say A-Team? I have an A-Team wax pack from 19...
That's great.
Roger Rabbit? Here he is.
Okay, Kat. All right. Settle down. All right. Hey, another 1980s news. As reported by Entertainment Weekly, Mike Myers, again, the actor, was scared shitless. How funny his SNL co-stars were. Mike Myers recently looked back at his time at Saturday Night Live, revealing in a recent podcast interview that he was intimidated by how funny his co-stars were. Myers told Vulture's Good One comedy podcast, quote, when I got to Saturday Night Live and I saw how fucking good these guys were, I was scared shitless. I had an anxiety attack. I can imagine this.
Yeah.
You can imagine that? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look, I've only, I say recently, it's probably now 6 years ago. I had my first, I think, panic attack. I know I had a panic attack. I just don't know that I had one before that.
Interesting.
And I had one that lasted like 6 months. Seriously, no doubt.
Oh, that sounds horrible.
Oh, it's terrible. Yeah. I'm medicated now and I'm fine. I know. I did 10 years of therapy, Meg. I was prepared for something like this, but nothing could get me out of this one thing. And anyway, I've talked about it on the show before. But this seems to go to another thing and thinking about it as a performer. And I know, Meg, that you have a theater background, performing background.
I do.
When you step into a room in the green room with other actors, that you have this kind of imposter syndrome, you can. And I don't think that's uncommon among, creative types to feel like, am I as good as these people?
I mean, in my experience, I've done the scariest things on stage that I have no business doing. And I absolutely was an imposter, no doubt about it. And in those moments, actually, for me, it's when I was the calmest because there was just absolutely no room for then I just wouldn't have walked out on stage, right? Yeah. So there's something, stage actually for me it's so scary that it's not scary. The time that I did have a panic attack. It happened out of nowhere and was based on nothing.
That's bizarre.
And it was in the 80s, actually. And I'd never even heard of a panic attack. So I actually didn't know what was happening to me. There's no language around it either.
Right.
So all I knew is that I was going to die.
Wow.
Yeah.
For no rhyme or reason, just having a physiological reaction.
Yeah. Just sort of.
And it was like the week before I was graduating from college, which might have something to do with it. But
I was wondering, was it near something? Yeah, like some momentous thing.
At the time. And it was just, whenever I think about panic attacks, I'm so happy now that at least we have language around it, that we can talk about it, that we can share, that as it turns out, many other people have had them too. Mm-hmm. I think that makes it a lot more manageable.
Yeah, I'm proud of my kids. We talked to them about this stuff growing up because we do have the words like you're saying. And, during this period of time I mentioned where I had this sort of low level fight or flight that wouldn't turn off, I would occasionally have a panic attack. And it had to do with, just in short, just because you don't know and other people know, but I had hearing damage and the doctors were like, we don't know if it'll get better. We don't really know much about the ears and how they work. It's not exactly that, but it was what happens to your ears or why you're hearing things or not. There's a lot of reasons why that are physiological that don't have to do with your ears. Some of them are hearing damage. Anyway, it had this gamut of things that they were like, we don't know. And so you can't escape the sound. You can't, you're always hearing a problem. And so in addition to having this low level sort of fight or flight, every now and then I just have a freaking out, I'm going to die. I need to leave here. And for folks who don't know, you feel like you need to get out of wherever you are, your clothes, your house. I mean, I just can't be here because of that flight thing. But I'm proud. This happened once in a restaurant where I was with my kids, and it was years ago. So my one daughter was really young, and my oldest though, because we had talked to her. She's like, okay. She went with me outside, and she started talking. Name 5 things you can see. Tell me something you can smell. Go through the 5 senses, all the things, the tricks. It's helped me get through
cool.
it. So,
it's such a that's a very sweet story.
An amazing kid. Well, I don't know if we had the language let's see. Mike Myers joined Saturday Night Live in 1989, so it still might be that type of time where he didn't, area when he didn't know what was going on.
Right.
And again, it seemed like maybe he's having some sort of imposter syndrome. But it was, you can kind of understand because it was filled with talented performers at that time in the entire canon or, life of the history of the franchise. And mid 80s, it was bad. And Eddie Murphy tried to rescue it. I don't know that.
Right.
There's some rough years.
But in the later years, you had Kevin Nealon, Phil Hartman, Jan Hooks.
Phil Hartman.
Yes. Nothing that guy couldn't do. So, walking into that cast, these folks, a lot of them come from the Groundlings, he came from Second City. And in fact, it turns out that his Wayne's World character that made, sort of his name for himself on the show and sort of changed his career, I would say, was something that he did predating Saturday Night Live while he was still at Second City. As early as 1986, he was performing on Canadian television and in Second City, the legendary comedy school / sketch troupe, was performing this character. And he tells a story that after a short time later, he says that he's, quote, I'm in Chicago and I get a call from Lorne Michaels and he says, I understand you do a Wayne character, end quote. And they invited him to audition for the show.
It's so interesting because, just thinking about Wayne's World, it's such an endearing character. He's a complete, guy in a basement, whatever, but you love him. There's something so lovable, I think, about Wayne's World.
Yes.
And that even, I don't know, and that I guess that Lorne Michaels heard about this character, that it appealed to so many different kinds of people, I think is really interesting.
Yes. And I love hearing about the origins of things like this because Wayne's World to me is sort of this, it's like, how could there be a time when that didn't exist? It just feels a little iconic to me because of the time that I was experiencing it and how I perceive Mike Myers. It's like, wait a minute, people people might have imposter syndrome around him. So imagining him feeling that way about somebody else is just very funny to me. But I believe it. It's just hard to imagine.
That's a great lesson. It's one also that talking about my kids now. This is just a show about families and raising kids. But Unlike, look, we got to bring it back to the 1980s. Unlike how I was raised, we were latchkey kids and told, I don't know, go get a job. We talk to our kids about, what they want to do and how they can get there and that sort of thing. But one of the things we do try to instill is, especially in this day and age with this social media, you could be famous for doing nothing and not make money. You could have 1 million followers and, not make any money off of it. Success takes time. And everybody who's successful had that moment, like you're saying, Kat, where they were in a theater somewhere, just doing a character that they thought was funny and, doing their 10,000 hours. Yeah.
And boom. Although maybe not boom. It's not boom. It's not, people didn't go viral back then, right? It did take time and it stuck. So,
and he was probably doing a half dozen other characters too. It's that this guy really was of a time. I think he just he landed, that character landed for most people. And I think I've heard that it was instant, that so many people responded to that.
Yes.
It's interesting. You couldn't do that character now, right? Because the uniqueness about it was this young person doing his own show on public access, which anybody can have public access now, no matter how old you are.
Right.
I've bemoaned this era, Meg. Kat's heard it so many times, but you guys may feel this too. I don't want to put any thoughts in your head necessarily negative, but your show is good and deserves to be heard.
Oh,
Desperately Seeking the 80s. Unfortunately, there's a bunch of garbage that people have to get through to find you. And a lot of those shows have the name 80s in the title, unfortunately.
There are lots of shows with 80s in the title. This is we share that burden, don't we?
Yes. And most of them, except for Meg's show and our show. Garbage! Don't listen. Karen says, with regard to anxiety or panic attacks, sour candy helps too. I just learned that a few months ago.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Sour candy. Okay.
Nice. Doug says, Kat, you're like Felix the Cat with a K.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that makes sense. Brandon says, I cut my teeth on that generation of SNL. Mike Myers, Dana Carvey. Oh, yeah, Dana Carvey. There's another one. Adam Sandler, all of those folks. Karen says, I have multiple favorite casts, but the group Myers will always be my favorite because I was a preteen and teenager in the 1980s.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't know what my cast would be. I feel like I feel like as early as I remember us having a Betamax, because that was our first recording device, we watched Saturday Night Live. It was a family thing. We would set it to record, and then Sunday morning, while eating donuts and bagels or rolls from the bakery, we would watch Saturday Night Live. Is as young as, I don't know, 10, 11, 12? I don't remember how old that would have been.
I think I was that young. We didn't watch it all the time. It was more like in the summertime. I somehow managed to be able to watch it.
Okay. Maybe the reruns at that point.
Most likely.
Sort of thing.
Yeah. Marcus says that angel dust is also helpful with panic attacks.
Oh yes. Right. Uh-huh.
Learning so much this evening.
Yes.
Meg, he's not a doctor. This is not a medical show. This is a family show about raising kids, but not a medical show. Hey, I know it sounds like we've got some giant corporate sponsor behind us, but we don't. Instead, our show is brought to you every week by listeners just like you. And by brought to you by them, I mean they help pay for the bills, and there's a bunch of them, to bring you a quality podcast about 80s nostalgia and its continued impact today. Hey, to join this group of fantastic folks, please go to patreon.com/1980s now. And if you can't do that, follow us on Facebook, YouTube, and the podcast platform you're listening to right now. All right, hey, next up in 1980s news, as found on Joe Blow, the latest Stephen King adaptation has shared their ratings board report. There's a lot of words in this. The latest Stephen King adaptation has shared its ratings board report on the trailer.
Right.
Wow. That was editing in action right there.
Just break down the title real quickly. The MPAA sets ratings for things. They also set ratings, it turns out, for the trailers. Okay, there we go. We're on the same page. So on February 21st, The Monkey, which is the latest horror movie from Longlegs director Osgood Perkins, and son of, by the way, Anthony Perkins.
Oh,
I did not know that.
Huh.
Yeah, so he
cool.
got his start in, he got his interest in horror, honestly, as they say. So his father was the star of Psycho, in the various Psycho films. Anyway, it's going to premiere on February 21st. I'm excited to see it, but audiences, however, had a chance to see the trailer. I saw it when I went to see Nosferatu on the day after Christmas.
I saw the trailer before Nosferatu this past weekend.
Okay.
I was sitting next to my daughter, who's 21, and she gasped. And she's got a strong stomach. And she said, that's too much.
Wow. Okay.
Like, I'm glad to hear it because that was insane. I mean, don't you guys think that trailer was over the top?
Yes. I think for a movie, a lot of movies are like this, but yeah, in a trailer. And I think it was a red band, right? I think it was an R, like not only R, it was red band. Like this is harder than R.
Harder than R.
You're sitting in the theater, like, what do? I think the red band trailers are, we're just going to show you what was in the movie. Like we're not going to cut stuff. But it turns out maybe they did because we got this report.
Yeah.
Because the producers of the film have shared the Motion Picture Association, the MPA's rating report on the trailer. And I think it's fascinating, in particular because my recollection is the MPA is this kind of clandestine organization that somebody themselves tasked with rating things. And, you know, businesses followed suit. They've kind of got a stranglehold on the theater owners organization. And I think the big six that are part of the MPA, it's like Disney and it's all the giants that you would suspect. So they kind of have, you know, you kind of have to deal with them. But how they get it done, how they make their decisions, it's been kind of quite controversial over the years, whether or not they are even necessary anymore. Again, it's a question that people raise. Well, how they weight violence versus sex seems to be perverse. Right. All these kinds of issues. In fact, Chicago Tribune film critic Michael Phillips wrote in 2010 that the ratings board had, quote, become foolish and irrelevant, and its members do not have my interests at heart or yours. They're too easy on violence, yet bizarrely reactionary when it comes to nudity and language, end quote. Yeah, they've got these strange, I don't know, evangelical maybe notions where, you know, we're seeing a penis is bad, but you could see someone's head get blown off.
Right.
But seeing a naked woman is okay. But,
that's such a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't even really thought about that, you know, that somehow violence is cathartic, so it's okay. Mm-hmm. But what I saw in that trailer, you can see that movie? You'll be able to see that movie?
I'm very curious. It does. Now, the thing for me that look, I'm not for torture porn. I'm not for violence or gratuitous, you know, gore. But there's something about this movie. In part, so for folks who don't know, it's based on a short story from 1980 written by Stephen King. And although it was first published at that time in some smaller publication, it gained sort of, you know, I don't know, certainly among our generation, had a huge following when it was published as part of Skeleton Crew. In fact, the monkey that the movie refers to is on the cover of the, you know, the earliest prints, as far as I can recall. I have one upstairs of that. Yeah. So it's based on that. They took liberties, and the story seems not to be the same. And in fact, I've got a sort of synopsis here. It differs from the 1985 version. Perkins wrote the story in addition to directing it, but the synopsis is as follows. When twin brothers Hal and Bill discover their father's old monkey toy in the attic, a series of gruesome deaths starts occurring all around them. The brothers decide to throw the monkey away and move on with their lives, growing apart over the years. But when the mysterious deaths begin again, the brothers must reunite and find a way to destroy the monkey for good. It sounds a little like It in a sense that it's a little bit earlier, and then they have to come back when they're older to deal with the demon thing, whatever again. But you're right, Meg. Right. The deaths, and I saw Perkins talking about it. Like there's so much fun deaths in this thing, and it's gonna be a blast. And then I saw the trailer, and I was like, wow, it's shocking.
It is shocking, but it also seems to be kind of funny.
Yes.
There's something about where, you know, like the blood is all on his face, and then he takes off his glasses, and there's no blood where his eyes are. There seems to be a little bit of not parody isn't really the right word for it, but it's so extreme. It's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
How violent it is. I don't know. There's something about it.
Yes, it might not be just gore. There was one little section which did not involve gore. It was a police officer was speaking, and there was something about the way that it looked like a police officer said the comment that they made, and I was like, oh, there's humor in here.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't know if you guys caught that. Yeah.
No.
When somebody's entire head goes up in flames, we'll all laugh in the theater because it's so funny at that point.
Well, what I was going to say, Meg, is you asked if this is the kind of thing I could endure. Because of the comedy element, yes. And I do like horror movies. I like clever horror movies, ones that, you know, something that we haven't seen before. I don't know. There's something about this, the balance of humor. I'm reminded of comedy horror movies that, you know, sort of found their place and their footing in the 1980s, like the Evil Dead franchise.
Good point.
Yeah, Return of the Living Dead. You know, there was these movies that did both. And the House films. Mm-hmm. Those weren't as gory as this one seems, but I don't know.
I'm having flashbacks. There's the baby carriage on fire. A baby on fire.
There can't be a baby in there. There can't be.
I know.
Just playing with us.
And the guy watching it, he's like, the way his facial expression is like, is that really happening? Which seemed like satirically funny. There was just some feeling about that.
I think you're right. I think that and that's so great with Stephen King stuff, because he always has a little bit of he's ribbing us a little bit. Got a great voice that way.
Yeah. And so I kicked this off by talking about this letter, and I want to share it with you. I've got an image of it here. Yeah. Actually, I've got a closer look at it here. So I think it's just fascinating to me because not only is this thing, again, this group is like, we don't know necessarily how they make their terminations. It gives us a little bit of insight. Let's see. Can we make it even bigger for everybody to see here? So they actually break down moment by moment the things that happen that stand out to them, I suppose, because they're not putting everything down.
Right.
And they make a little note next to it, what rating this would be. So woman's face set on fire and burning throughout the scene gets a restricted red tag, as we're talking about, red band.
Right.
But saying shit is compatible with PG-13.
Right.
What you brought up, this was surprising to me. The baby carriage on fire says it's compatible with adult skewing PG-13.
That's crazy.
That is crazy.
If it's adult skewing, why is it? I'm trying to. Okay.
What about this? Child mouthing fuck is restricted red tag use only. Mouthing.
First of all, Meg, when you said child mouthing fuck, I didn't see the fuck was in quotes, and I was like, what? What is this movie? This should be burned, and this guy should be in jail. Yeah, that was funny. Yeah. Bowling ball smashing child's face. You could almost read this and know you don't want to see it, I guess, huh?
If this were all I knew about it, I'd pass.
But actually, after our conversation, I think I might try.
Yeah.
I might try and see it. If my kids will go see it, I'll go see it.
That's fun.
My son is 18. My daughter's 21. They are both really into film, and they have very strong opinions. And if they want me to see a movie, I will go see the movie with them.
Very cool. Yeah. Yeah, I'm like that with my oldest, too.
Mm-hmm.
Marcus says, what the hell is happening at 141? 141's been redacted. The only thing we know is it says R targets only.
Such a good point. I wondered that too. Like, what could that possibly be?
Yeah, I should have brought the trailer up and looked at 141. I'll have to do that.
All right, well,
I'll get back to you, Marcus, on that. Yeah, I'm definitely curious about it.
I don't know if I will see this. I've definitely been on a journey to try to be okay with horror. Meg, Will knows this, but horror is something that I tend to avoid. But starting over the last year and a half, I've been trying to get horror movies under my belt. And I found it's actually not so bad. But, oh, man, I just don't know about this one.
I think if it's a good horror movie, like Get Out was amazing.
Exactly.
I mean, that should be on everybody's watch list.
Yeah, I agree. Because, again, look, there's a few, no spoilers here, but there's a few gory moments. But the atmosphere, the mood, that's what I like. Moody stuff, a little bit of gore, maybe social commentary. If you can get that in there, that's the trifecta, I think. But yeah.
And it's unpredictable.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a very well-crafted film.
Doug says, apparently my childhood would get an R rating. Doug reminds me, the other issue that folks have with criticism with the MPA is that they don't seem to evolve with the times. That is, an R today can be far gorier and more violent than an R was, 2 decades ago, for example.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Although I think the inverse was true in the 80s, where I feel like a movie that would be PG in the 80s would be an R. Some of those would be Rs, right? We can find movies in the 80s that are like, how did they have this for kids?
Well, Gremlins was like that. Isn't that the story of Gremlins that I could be wrong about this, but I think it was PG and they released it as PG and everyone went, are you crazy? Yeah. That's so violent. And then as a result, they were like, oh, we'll come up with this new thing, PG-13, in response to Gremlins. I think there was another movie that also fell into that category that year.
They were both Steven Spielberg adjacent films. Gremlins, which he produced, Amblin Entertainment, and Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom was the other film. And it was actually Spielberg who lobbied for the PG-13 rating because he was afraid that films that he were making like this, which he kind of wanted for kids but had some scary elements, would be getting an R and be cutting out his audience. So he was like, hey, there's got to be a way we can split this, that we can split the baby.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea at all.
Yeah.
Not set the baby on fire.
No.
Just split it.
Split the baby, yeah. Brandon says, I wish the censors would step aside when it comes to King-inspired films so that maybe they can get done the right way. Still waiting on the right version of Pet Sematary, even though I love the original.
Ooh, such a great story.
Do we have enough? Look, with the advent of social media, I suppose we have enough support systems among friends, family, and now the world as we crowdsource maybe what's in films to determine the ratings are helpful as a jumping off point. Do I show this to my kid? Now you do some digging because I know my kid can handle stuff that's some R stuff. You get my point. But maybe if we don't have the rating, we don't need that because we could just do a web search or something. Yeah,
seriously, go to Rotten Tomatoes and they'll tell you exactly what you're about to see.
Yeah, we need breakdowns like that. If they gave us that would be something. It'd be spoil the movie though. All right, finally in 1980s news. Let's see. John points out. Red Dawn was the first film after this to be PG-13.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Marcus says Poltergeist was PG-13. That can't be right, Marcus.
Oh,
it can't be right.
I don't.
Poltergeist came out in 1982, I believe, and Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom came out in 1984, and Gremlins came out in 84. So the first PG-13 film was after that.
Oh, he corrected himself.
The Poltergeist was so scary. Oh my God.
I think that's the point Marcus was making. It was PG. That's what he meant to say.
It was, yes.
The swimming pool scene in the mud.
Mm-hmm. I never went to a muddy swimming pool after that. But you know what it really did? Scared the shit out of people over clowns. I know so many people that are like, my fear of clowns is back to Poltergeist.
Right. In the corner.
Yes.
It comes alive.
Right. Which is also such a Stephen King imagery too, I feel like.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
Clowns in the 80s, bad.
And that's another Spielberg movie.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Finally, in 1980s and what do we call this? 1980s news, as reported by Variety, Hulk Hogan was booed heavily during Monday Night Raw's Netflix debut. Hulk Hogan, come on. He is one of the most iconic wrestlers. You got something to say, Meg, already?
She's making faces.
Did you see the documentary, Mr. McMahon?
No, I haven't.
It's fantastic.
It looks it. Okay.
I knew nothing about professional wrestling, until I saw that documentary. It is so good. And Hulk Hogan is interviewed all over it. It goes very dark because Vince McMahon went very dark, as I think people know now. He's been accused of all kinds of horrible things. And they don't really address Hulk Hogan, but what they do say, any of his controversies, but what they do say is this whole thing about, what are they called? Like if you're a bad guy versus a good guy.
Yeah, the heel.
A heel.
Mm-hmm.
And so that maybe with this whole booing, it'll actually work to his advantage because he could just become a heel. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not the worst thing in the world to be booed, I guess is what I'm saying.
Right. And Will, correct me if I'm wrong. Like, there was some point, and I was into wrestling, like as it went, before it got really popular. But I don't trust my memory. There was a time, I think, when Hulk Hogan was not cheered. I think he was a bad guy who then they flip flop sometimes. So is that true?
Yes, he did.
Meg, actually, you watched the documentary, so maybe you can.
He did.
Okay, good. Yeah. Okay.
And then he had a bit of a comeback at the time because he became a bad guy, a heel.
Right, in the 80s.
Yeah, he did have a little bit of that going back and forth. And then I think when he went to a different franchise, WCW, one of the competitors, he became another character and he was a heel then.
Okay, so is this one of those? Is this like a...
I don't know. Yeah, so I guess just to get everybody caught up. So Netflix has now got the rights to air a Monday Night Raw for what was formerly called the WWF and now called the WWE.
Yes.
I recall they changed it to E to avoid... insurance in different states, because if it's considered a real sporting event, they have to buy insurance. But if it's entertainment and they admit it's fake, then they don't have to.
Oh, is that it?
Yeah, the documentary talks about that a little bit.
Does it? I heard that it was so they didn't have a conflict, a branding conflict with the World Wildlife Fund, right?
Yes,
WWF.
there's that too. Uh-huh.
Yes.
The World Wildlife Federation
Or
had
Federation.
issues with them
Yes.
using WWF, and they're like, all right, we'll just turn it into an E.
Now I want to see Hulk Hogan body slam that panda.
Yes.
Or a kangaroo. That would be fun.
Yeah. Oh, those things are tough. But yeah, so as we mentioned here, instead of being welcomed with the usual cheers we'd expect for the Hulkster, he was greeted with jeers. He had been rumored to appear at the event, but 2.5 hours into the show, he finally walks out to his typical entrance song, Real American. He's wearing a shirt that says Real American Beer on it, this beer that he's been hawking, which is, I don't know. I've never had one, but I can't imagine it's any good.
I'm not going to try it.
And he was joined by Jimmy Hart, who's also, another notorious heel from the 1980s. But yeah, he was welcomed with a sea of booze. He did, however, congratulate the WWE and Netflix's collaboration, saying, quote, "In the past, I've had a whole bunch of partners down the line, but the greatest partner the WWE has ever had is the fact that tonight we're making history and the WWE has teamed up with Netflix, the greatest tag team partner of all time."
That's kind of goofy.
Such a bunch of bullshit.
That's goofy.
One audience member who shared a video of Hogan's entrance on X wrote, "Watching Hulk Hogan get annihilated with booze while trying to sell his ripoff Bud Light was effing incredible. And I grew up a Hulkamaniac." Yeah, so some folks are speculating that it's because Trump has been very outspoken about his support for, Some people are speculating that he was booed. Hogan was booed. Hulk was booed because he's been outspoken lately of support of Trump.
Right.
I think that's possible.
But like, who goes to see these shows? Who's in the arena? That
Thank you, Meg.
So upset.
Right.
Supported Trump. Maybe it's because of the beer.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
The beer is so gross that they're like, how dare you? They probably gave them the beer as they came into the arena. And they went, this is disgusting.
I would have been booing for my own reasons, but yeah, I'm sure many people were not booing for that particular one about political leanings.
I know. I don't feel too bad for Hulk, I gotta say. He seems to get himself in his own situations.
Yeah, I think it's just all part of the drama of it.
And maybe the reason I bring up the heel thing is just because maybe he can spin it. I don't know.
But again, try. And even if it's the political thing, they'll spin it and say, liberals are soft and if they can't handle my masculinity or some bullshit.
Right.
I think I know the answer to this because I have an answer maybe, but is it fair to, let's say it is the Trump thing, is it fair to punish celebrities in their day jobs for their political views outside of their work,
Absolutely.
Oh, right. Yes, that's the answer we wanted. Yes.
Like, look, your political views are, if you make them public, then everyone has the right to comment on that and to like you more or less because of them. Absolutely.
The personal is political. The political is personal.
And you have a choice as a public person to make it public or not make it public. And if you do, and Hulk Hogan certainly did in this last election season, then guess what? We heard you and we're responding.
Marcus says, I like the rando. The rando's name is Meg. Doug says he was a bad guy in the NWO. All right, that's the one I was trying to think of. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Brandon says, interesting fact, Hogan's Real American theme was performed by rock singer Rick Derringer. I don't remember who Rick Derringer is.
I know the name. I'll have to go listen to it.
Sounds familiar.
McCoy, something like that, maybe a long, long time ago. I don't know why that's significant, Brandon, but you can let us know. Yeah, I agree. I mean, look, I'm not happy the way society is slipping away in this sense, because my recollection is in the 1980s, friends, family, adults who because I wasn't talking about political stuff when I was a kid, but I was observing adults who didn't agree. Yeah. But they still were family and they still got together and they still, helped each other change a tire and weren't shit talking each other when they weren't around.
That's fair. But also, I guess, especially because you're talking about Hulk Hogan in this particular situation where it is about all this, violence and He-Man stuff. It's like, well, then my response to him can be just as animated.
Yeah. Actually, I guess I don't disagree with you. I'd sound like I disagreed with you.
Oh, no. You bring up a really good point. It is a big shame that we can't just have a reasonable conversation about politics, because it doesn't seem like that's going to happen anytime soon.
I guess that's my point. My believing that it's fair for me to be like, I'm not supporting Real American Beer because I don't want to support his support of Trump, that I believe that's a fair, but it's because of the, the constructs of this society that we have today, I guess, the way we say collectively, but the three of us are not involved in this, and it built, whatever, I don't know.
Well, but he started it. Is my point. Hulk Hogan started it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wait, how? What did I miss?
With all of this macho crap.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and the ripping the shirts and,
That's true, yeah.
That's a statement. That's a big statement.
Brandon says Derringer's he sung Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo. All right, cool. Yeah, we know that song. Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo. Yeah, I got that one.
I'm sure I've heard it, but I need to go look it up.
I have to sing it, Meg, because otherwise it'll get muted on YouTube. John F. GXG in the house.
Yes, we had a quick pop in from John Reddick. It said a quick howdy from Vegas. Miss you guys.
There you go.
So he's checking in.
Yeah, I was going to ask him if he wanted to call and just do here I am live on the Las Vegas showroom floor of CES. But I was like, no, he's too busy. The dude's putting out a video every couple of hours. All right. Hey, look, we've got our own work to do right here. And Kat does right now. When I say that was our show. Now, Meg, you'll watch that she wasn't prepared. Remember earlier we were talking about, she was like, I prepare and I'm always prepared. Now you learn it's a bunch of lies.
I never know when he's going to throw in an extra news story. Okay, our show is brought to you thanks in part to our early adopters like Karen Flieger and Rick Parker.
Yay!
And Karen is here tonight.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us, Karen. And thank you especially to our Secret of Our Success level Patreon supporters, Marcus Taylor, Tony Great, Matt Marino, John Henderson, Brandon Greer, and Nick Guillory.
Yeah. Thank you so much, guys. We are so very grateful for your continued support of our show, helping us bring you this 1980s look back and look forward week after week. If you'd like to join this fine group of folks, please go to please go to Patreon. You can go anywhere you want, but this is where you're going to find something. Patreon.com/1980s. Now, if you can't do that, share a Facebook post. Follow us on the platform you're listening to right now. Follow us on YouTube, Facebook, all those places. Please, it's free. And seriously, it helps. And do it for Meg, too, and her show, because they also deserve to be heard. And these little things are the things that help us get out of that clutter. Because, again, there's a lot of shitty 80s shows. And you guys know it. Some of them have Gen X in the title, too. But not John's show. John's show is also great.
But Brandon would like to point out that John better watch out. Meg has knocked it out of the park tonight.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's
very exciting. Yeah. Well, hey, sadly, Meg won't be here next time. Or maybe she will. Maybe we'll fire John. I don't know. No, we won't. But we will talk to you again next time on 1980s Now.
Until next time.
Bye.
Go ahead, say goodbye, Meg.
Say anything you want.
Thank you so much for having me. This is much fun.